I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, Dr. George O'Neill. He is an ACS career consultant and workshop presenter. Dr. O'Neill has an extensive background both in industry, a little bit in academia, but mostly in spending so much time giving us really great career advice. Some of you were at his resume review session yesterday. So George, take it away. Thank you.
I've had the pleasure of working with some of you online already. You've sent me your resumes and we've worked back and forth. And later today we're going to have resume reviews. Try to add that on before we close out for the day so that those of you who have signed up for it, we have some time allotted there. We also have, since I am a doctor, I do have walk-ins, and I'll fit you in the schedule as time is available, because we have some people who may cancel out. And if I wasn't able to get you into the formal time zone, please come and we'll see if we can work you in, or maybe double up with some of the ones who have already signed up, and one maybe just career mentoring rather than a resume review. I'm really pleased, certainly with the showing, and it is an important thing for you, I think, as aspiring PhDs or postdocs. And speaking of that, how many here are postdocs? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 PhDs, aspiring PhDs, hopefuls, bachelors, masters. Okay, so we'll concentrate mostly on the ones that are in graduate type work. Before we go to that, let me take a look at what we have as career development. I'm part of the career development program with ACS. I've been working with them since I retired from Eastman Kodak / Eastman Chemical Company as a research scientist in 1998 as a career consultant. And as such, we offer a number of services free of charge to members online. In my case, since many of you may not be members of the ACS, I've waived that and I'm working with you one-on-one however I can. So we're not having that particular stipulation in the interaction I have with you all. Webinars are on the acs.org/careers. For those of you from other countries, there's a webinar that was completed yesterday on international visas and international scientists coming to this country. You may want to find, that'll be on the web now. It was live yesterday, and it was taped, or I guess tape's an old term, isn't it? It's like VHS. Doesn't exist anymore. But in any case, it was recorded, and it's available for those who, and you don't have to be a member of the ACS, I don't think, in order to have access to it. This one is coming up later in February, and they're going to have people talking about where the jobs are, what's going on in pharmaceutical industry, a lot of the areas where you folks are going to be interested in going. It's an hour's worth. You sign up for it. There's no charge other than hooking into it. Now, how many here are looking for an academic position? 1, 2, 3, a handful. How about industry? Mostly industry. Well, that's my strength. My field is industrial research for Eastman Kodak and Tennessee Eastman Company in northeastern part of Tennessee. 30-plus years working in the laboratory, and terminated my career, or reached the end of my career in 31 years as a director of new research that's coming out, emerging technology, that type of activity. So I've had, and I lived in Japan to do that for almost 5 years. Came back to the United States with my wife and retired. So I've had international experience. I've had a great deal of industrial experience making products for customers in coatings, fibers, inks, polymer chemistry. So for those of you who are interested in that sort of thing, I can talk to you later, but I certainly have insights into how to present yourself to industrial firms as emerging PhDs, or postdocs. So, that said, we're going to be covering two principal topics. Traditional pathways that lead into an area that's quite familiar to you, laboratory, and non-traditional, where there is very little, if any, laboratory work going on. And you say, oh no, this can't be. I've trained myself this long, this hard to get to this point. I certainly want to have the next step into a lab. And you may reach that step. But I've had any number of PhDs and postdocs tell me at resume reviews and discussions, mentoring at ACS meetings, and also online, I don't want to be in the lab ever again. I have had it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how you feel, and that's the way you think about it. We're here today to give you ideas of pathways that you may find more rewarding in terms of personal satisfaction, contribution, family life, any number of reasons why you might be able to try launching from your PhD or postdoc experience into a field that you don't know much about. And that's what we're all about today. We have a wonderful array of talent, individuals from entrepreneurs to professors in research organizations, research universities, to folks that work for the ACS, nonprofit organizations, myself in industry. So there's a whole array. And one of the jewels I think that we seldom get at ACS, someone working for the United States government, EPA. And that's an altogether different game in terms of resume writing, finding jobs, and Miriam, I think, will do a fine job in helping you sort out what would be available in the government, federal government, state, and even local communities. Not that she would know much about that, but that's another area you could consider too. So we're asking you to get out of the box and not jump off the table that the box is on, but just get outside the box and think about, what if I had an interest in this or that? What if? And play that game for a little while, besides tracking strictly for industry or academia, that type of work. So a bit of a game. We have academia, industry, government. We have an entrepreneur, someone that started his own company here. And you've read, no doubt have read his bio. A very rare individual, indeed, to have, certainly for a group like this. It'd be wonderful to, if you have any aspirations in that area or want to talk about small businesses, small companies. Cedric will be in a position, I think, to render some opinion on that. Many of you may be thinking of the large, the gigantic companies like Pfizer and some of the conglomerates that have formed over the years as your employers. Well, there's a host of jobs that are open, potentially open, in some of the smaller companies. And he may be a good one to quiz about that particular opportunities there. Product manager, ACS staff, and I'm going to briefly mention two areas that we didn't have covered, patents and writing as a living, or for the fun. Where do chemists work? First of all, manufacturing, 51%. This is the 2008 survey, ACS. Chemical related and biotech and so forth, 36% combined. Other manufacturing, 15%. Academia claims 30%. Most of them are university and four-year colleges. Many of them are research-oriented. Others are what they call PTIs, primarily teaching institutes. They don't have research. They don't require that grants and that type of thing for you to be successful at the school. And then you can see the other academic areas that you could work. We're going to be spending a lot more time in the non-manufacturing and non-academia area, government being one, working for small companies, A lot of the things that you'll be searching out on the web are going to be larger companies that have certain fields that you're interested in. We're going to open up some other, hope it's not Pandora's box. Sometimes too many options is bewildering, but at least it'll get you thinking about something other than following your, perhaps your love in the laboratory. What kind of money are you going to make? I can't guarantee these numbers you'll get, but this is a representative figures of the kind of jobs you can look for. Academic institution, non-PhD, starting salary, about $53,000 for a 9-month contract. PhD, about $60,000. Now, it'll vary from school to school, region to region. The southeastern part of the United States probably has some of the lowest salaries in the country, but so it has also the lowest cost of living, cost of housing, and so forth. And you can see maps of that in Chemical and Engineering News where they break out where the money is, and these are just representative figures to give you some idea of the magnitude. PhD starting in industry can go from $96,000 to maybe $110,000 for a year. Any questions? Just to give you an idea what you'll be looking at later on when you're maybe getting an offer or you're looking at what area you want to go into. We have panelists who are going to deal with industry and academia. Nita Eskew will follow me, and she's worked for Bayer, and she's at Salem College. So she has had a bimodal career in with chemistry as a launching point. Be a good resource for those of you who can talk to her about a PTI school, primarily teaching institute versus working in industry. And I think most of her career was in manufacturing. Nicholas Oberlies is a professor at UNCG at Greensboro. Miriam Medina Vera is EPA in Raleigh. Is it in Raleigh? Triangle Park. And she can help you understand how to approach the federal government for jobs and the type of work she's doing too at EPA. And then we're going to have non-traditional jobs. Getting out of the lab. And this, I have this gesture there because I was at ACS meeting in San Francisco and was down on Ghirardelli Square, and there was a guy there who was a jester, and he had jokes. He was very animated, at the end he had a big top hat. He passed around, big crowd around him, and throwing money in it. And he said, I listened to him, and believe it or not, there is a chemistry speak we had. There's ways we speak, the way we order our thinking, the way we present ourselves sometimes, the vocabulary we use. And I first got there, I thought, geez, this guy's, he sounds familiar, like somebody I would have known in a lab somewhere. Turns out he was. He was a postdoc in bioengineering and with chemistry background. And he said, I hated it. And I'm doing this, and I love it. I make more money. He was telling the crowd, it's so. I thought maybe if you're looking at how you appear in the laboratory with a white coat on, looking at things in a vial of liquid or something, if you have a non-traditional career, you might want to consider this transition. I'm not putting down non-traditional careers. I just thought I thought, wow, that's an interesting way to get to making money. And he thoroughly loved it. He just exuded acting and jokes and things. Non-traditional, Cedric Pierce, who's the founder and CEO of Microsyntex. Product manager for Chem Abstracts, Christian Dumitrescu from Romania. And Joe Sestarik, program manager for ACS, originally from Australia. And I asked him, had he ever been to the capital of Australia, Vienna? And he said, no, I haven't. Since from Eastern Tennessee, not a lot of people know that Austria and Vienna and Australia are different. So we have quite a mix of talented people who have been successful in transforming their lives from laboratory to laboratory and laboratory to other types of positions. Now, for my part, and I'll just be brief on this, the patent field in industry is the most critical field for the chemical industry as well as others, because without the patents, the companies are not able to produce materials without interference from competition. And you read a lot where the pharmaceuticals companies, a lot of their cash cows are coming off a patent, and they go to generics. When they do that, the price plummets, the volume plummets, they plummet. They have to have new things in the pipeline. Very tough to keep that pipeline full. So a lot of the companies are under severe stress to deal with the fact their patents are running out. They've even been able to give them an extension. The patent used to be 17 years. I think in some cases they've extended that period of monopoly use because they have so much time to identify a product that is useful. They've got to put through testing and that sort of thing. So they've given them some break there. There are 3 areas in patents that I would suggest you take a look at. Patent agent for a company, patent attorney, patent examiners. Examiners are typically at the patent office in Washington or their branches, and they have been hiring. They need people who are technically qualified to deal with patents that are coming across their desk that have a lot of our chicken wire scratching on it for formulas. And they have to have examiners that have an appreciation what that is. So that's a government job. Attorney could be independent, or you could work for a company. Eastman had 6 patent attorneys for a technology group of 600, of which about 110, 120 were expected to generate patents. They would execute, develop the patent for you, put it into the patent office, and defend it if necessary. Agents, they're the ones who, within the company, are the ones who array patents and the cost of them, and they keep track of where they are, and they're the ones that you talk to about getting the application written. So they're very valuable also. It's always nice if you're in the chemistry field to talk to someone who's not buffaloed by some of the chemistry that we're trying to claim as a invention. Technical and freelance writing. Now we're out of the box and maybe off the edge of the table. There are 4 major regions: technical writer, science writer, journalist, and freelance. I can address the first and the last. The first, Lisa Balbez is one of my colleagues and also a career consultant, and she has published a book on non-traditional careers for chemists. And it's been well received, and she also has her own business of writing technical reports, and also I think you had some of this, Nita, in your business, where in manufacturing you had to write procedures that are comprehensible and coherent for operators. And she does that. She also does technical literature for a lot of the products that companies have. She writes that, and she's located, I think, in Columbus. Don't hold me to that. But in any case, it's Lisa Balbez. You could Google her, and you'll find out what kind of work she's been doing. George Eastman said, who was the founder of Kodak, Eastman Kodak, he said that what you do at work determines what you have. What you do after work determines who you are. And that's where I think a lot of you maybe don't know who you are yet. Where am I going to be the happiest? Where are my strengths? Well, I took a test in high school, and out of it came my leading interest, according to the test, was writing and journalism. Why? How can you make a living doing that? So when I went to school, I tried engineering, didn't find that too interesting. Got into, I found that more of a challenge than I wanted. Went to chemistry, and that's where I am now. But I always had in the back of my mind, from my high school times, writing. And so I decided to have a hobby of writing for pay as a freelance writer. So the point of the story is, look back in your history, where were you happiest? That was legal. We don't, there may be some occasions you were ecstatic, but I don't believe you want to make a living out. Well, that's another story, but do keep it in the legal aspects of life. And so I took up freelance writing for some of the magazines at the time, like the Line magazine, VFW. These were magazines that were looking for freelance writers who would contribute different topics to them. And so I had a cover for the Line magazine on diabetes, based on a story of a child in our neighborhood that I knew very well. And they were running a control her diabetes, and she was struggling with it, and that prompted me to write this, blah, 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 and it was published. I don't put this on any resume necessarily. This is not a scientific study. This is for the general public. And I wrote one for, I've had like 10 or 12 of these over the years, and volunteers of the Highlands of Rhone teamed up with a local photographer, and this was published in the Tennessee Conservationist. Again, the story is, if you like something and you can't make a living at it, make it a hobby that'll be who you are or who you can be, and that's what that's part of my story on this part with the freelance writing. The other in technical writing, you can make a living. You can do it also as a science writer for some of the science organizations, ACS included. So keep that in mind. So thank you very much. And from here on, we will turn it over to the real talent of this program. And I guess Nita Eskew is next up.
First, we just go to the next slide.
Next slide, please. Yes.
All right. Thank you, George. Well, I'm delighted to be in Chapel Hill. It's always a pleasure to come back to what feels like my second home here. Again, I'm Nita Eskew, and what I hope to show you in the next few minutes is my journey beginning in the chemical industry and then going to academia. I received my education here at Chapel Hill as an undergraduate in chemistry. Loved it so much I couldn't bear the thoughts of leaving, so I stayed here for my PhD. Then after that, I went on to Bayer Corporation. I began in New Martinsville, West Virginia, in their polyurethane division. And this is probably something that you don't think about so much, but it was called the Process Improvement Lab. Here you're working very close with production, and actually you worked in production daily. So you would wear your uniform. It wasn't Carolina blue, it was a blue Smurf color. So you had on your little Smurf uniform and hard hat and steel-toed boots and went out to the production area. We worked very closely with our engineers, and we would design experiments actually in the plant. So this was a continuous operation, which means that your product is flowing constantly through pipes, through heat exchangers, distillation columns, and so forth. So we may decide to alter the temperature a little bit, alter a flow rate, change the addition of our reactants, or, yes?
Excuse me, could you speak louder?
Okay, I'm sorry. Is this?
Move the microphone down a little bit.
There we go. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay now? All right, thank you. So with the continuous operation, the materials flowing through the pipelines and going through the different pieces of equipment, heat exchangers, distillation columns, and so forth. So we may change a temperature or flow rate or reactants that we're putting into our process. And then you would do inline sampling of it to see how had you impacted your product. Was the viscosity different, color, whatever property we were looking for. And all of this was dictated by what our customers requested. So they may get a product from us that doesn't have the property that they're looking for, so we make a modification. So this was pretty neat, being quite different than being in the lab where you're working maybe on a 10 milliliter scale. I put the dates up here not so you can see how old I am, but actually one of the things I want to show you is how in this corporate setting you moved around a lot to different positions. Next, I transferred to the Goose Creek, South Carolina plant, which is right outside of Charleston, South Carolina, so actually a little more desirable location as well. And here I was more in a typical research and development lab at the beginning. So there we made dye stuffs for both the textile and paper industries and pigments that were actually used in automotive coatings. Yes?
With your different jobs in Bayer, were they to meet the company's needs or because you wanted to do something new and apply to a new job?
Sort of both. Sometimes it would be something I would seek out, and other times it would be maybe a change in the products and just the business as a whole. And so here I'm starting in research and development, but unlike what you're doing in graduate school where you're doing more basic research, discovering new things, this again was controlled by the customers. So we would take products that were already in place and modify them, improve them, or a customer had a request for a new product, a new application, and we would develop those. Then I moved to the production support group, which that's more similar to what I had done in my first position, where we worked closely with production, doing experiments in the plant. But in this particular production facility, they had batch processes. So you had a 5,000-gallon tank, all of your reactants went into that, it was mixed, and then it may go on to some purification step, but quite different than the other process. So in addition to working with production to help them improve their products, we also had to work with ISO 9002, which is a quality program. So with the industrial setting, you get into a lot more of the paperwork, the procedures, and things that your customers want to see. Then I went to you see, going from here, supervisor to senior chemist, it looks like I was demoted. No, actually, it wasn't, but these corporations move a lot as far as restructuring, so they just eliminated a line of supervision. So you'll see that happens frequently. And then the last that I have here, the pilot plant, this was probably the most enjoyable position that I had while I was at Bayer. This is a lot of fun because now you're taking your experiments that may be on a 500 milliliter scale and scaling them up to about 20 liters. So now you have the cute equipment and all the fun instruments and things in the pilot plant, so you can see the impact of the larger scale with temperature exchange, mixing, and whatever other effects you may have. So that was a lot of fun. So here again, working with the research and development, completely product oriented. And then next I decided that I wanted to move into manufacturing supervision. And so I first began in an area that I was very familiar with, working with the dye stuffs and pigments and the optical brighteners. And here on a daily basis, you're scheduling the production. What are you going to make for the whole month? Working with marketing to see what do our customers need, how much are we going to make, when does it have to be delivered, as well as working with operations personnel, making sure the certain task gets done. We know who's going to be in charge of which batch for the day. Safety is a big factor in industry, maintaining those safety standards. George mentioned the procedures, writing these procedures, making sure all of the safety aspects were written in there. That was a very high priority in working with production. Also, anytime we had a new process that came into the plant, whether it be from the something that had been slightly modified or a brand new product that had come through the pilot plant. Here, we would go through large safety reviews with our engineers and safety department to do the what-if scenarios, and that was very important. Then I decided to move to Dorlistan, and that's spandex fiber that's used in athletic clothing and different other clothings and applications where you need that stretchy fiber. And I was actually working in the yarn winding and the warehouse there. So you're probably thinking, why in the world would a chemist go to the warehouse? And there was one reason that I chose to do that. I had been working in the lab in one area of production and sort of been moving around to expand my resume and expand my potential as far as moving up in the company. And I felt with this position I could work more closely with marketing and get a better feel for that aspect. As it turned out though, well, let me back up for a second. So I went there, and then the plans were they were going to expand their production. It was going to be a great fit for an organic chemist, and that was where I was going after a couple of years in the warehouse. Well, our business, I'm afraid, moved away to Asia, and so that new plant never came along, and so I started thinking, what am I going to do now? I cannot work in the warehouse the rest of my life. This is quite monotonous, as you can imagine, dealing with cartons and different spools of yarn going out. Not the most exciting thing in the world. So I started thinking about what I really enjoyed most during my career, and I really enjoyed teaching when I was a graduate student and teaching in the labs. So I began to think about changing careers, shifting and going into academia. And so that's what I did. In 2001, I went to Salem College, which is located in Winston-Salem. It's a small liberal arts college for women. It was founded back in 1772. And I'm just curious here, how many of you did your undergraduate studies at a school that had 2,000 or fewer students? Okay, several of you. So you know what it's like at that small institution, and where your professors wear a lot of different hats. Here, everyone has their own specialty. At a large school, at Salem, there are only 3 of us in the chemistry department, and actually 2.5 because one person teaches physics as well, so it's really just 2.5. So in addition to teaching organic chemistry, I also teach biochemistry. I do a spectroscopy course. Right now I'm teaching a medicinal plants course for honor students. I do a chemistry and art course for non-science majors. And I've also taught in the general education program as well for some courses that are not science related. So, and of course I don't teach all of these at the same time, thank goodness, but the teaching load is quite heavy. And again, you do have to be prepared to do a variety of courses, which can be fun also. Another thing that occupies a lot of time is serving on committees in a small college because there aren't that many faculty members. I think there are more faculty here in the chemistry department than all of Salem College. And so the work falls on many of us, and usually you're on a couple of committees. I'm also the director of the Women in Science and Mathematics program, where we are looking to enhance the experiences of our students, bringing in guest speakers, helping with internships, and those sort of things. With research, I do try to make a little time in there for this, and the reason I do it is because it's fun. It's that discovery, it's that creativity. That's something I think you can't ever get away from is being a scientist. You always have that interest of learning new things. And so being at the small school, again, there's not much time left for this. And there aren't many resources for this either. You don't have NMRs sitting around. You don't have the new mass spec or a brand new HPLC. So the only way that this becomes feasible is through collaborations. So I've been fortunate in working with others to help with some analyses, to help us grow our plants. We actually do some work with American ginseng which is a medicinal plant. It's native to North Carolina. And all the work that goes on is with my undergraduate students, a few of those. And so we have these collaborations at other universities to work with us so that we can keep the project alive. And why do I do this? Again, it's not a priority at Salem for you to do this research with undergraduates, but I love working with the students. And again, that's what drove me back to the academic world to start with. I'm just going to close here with a couple of career essentials, things I would recommend to you. If you're not a member of the American Chemical Society, I encourage you to do so. I started as a graduate student. The Chemical and Engineering News, the website, the resources, people you can call. I strongly encourage you to do that. Going to American Chemical Society conferences and meetings are always a highlight for me. Helps me stay current. Again, at a small school, there are only 3 chemists there, so I don't have a lot of other people down the hallway that I can bounce ideas off of. So it's great to go to these conferences, get feedback, make new contacts and new collaborations. So take advantage of those. The other thing I would strongly encourage you to do is maintaining your contact with your research advisor as well as other faculty, not just your research advisor, but other faculty. You never know where your career may take you. I never thought I would be back in academia after graduating from here. So you never know what your needs may be in the future. So keep those contacts. And of course, networking with your lab partners and other colleagues here at school and outside of school, and take advantage of that. And thank you for your attention.
Hi, my name is Christian Dumitrescu. I'm with Chemical Abstract Service in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm here to talk a little bit about alternative careers in chemistry. I'm not a chemist myself. I'm a biophysicist, actually, with a physics background. One thing that I want to add that George was saying, it's a great opportunity, for example, if you get a job in one of the, like, let's say, United States Patent Office. There are great opportunities there for patent examiners. I know they're hiring a lot in the years to come, and I know they even help you with a law degree if you want. So that's a fantastic thing because you could get tuition paid. So just along those lines. So really, I'm gonna talk. This is was a big jump for me. I was from the bench biophysicist to a marketing professional. You can tell this is a large step. It's not going industry, working science. It's just going totally different. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my career path. Well, first I'm going to say a couple things about ACS. So Chemical Abstract Service is a division of American Chemical Society. We're a non-for-profit organization like our mother company, ACS. The ACS vision is improving people's life through the transforming power of chemistry. This they're building there. It's a fantastic society, actually the largest professional scientific organization in the world with 163,000 members and about 100 countries or so. So again, I would suggest it would be fantastic for you if you become a member of this organization for now or when you graduate. A little bit about Chemical Abstract Service. So again, we're located in Columbus, Ohio. We have about 1,300 staff, out of which 600 are scientists. They're PhDs and they're masters, with lots of background in chemistry, some background in biosciences. And these guys are building databases for the chemists, chemical engineers, and other chemistry-related and bio-related areas. We're producing, these are our main products, the Science and Technology Network. This is a tool for information professionals. Then we have the Science IP. It's a search service, again, for, for patent attorneys, for law firms. So where we do customized searches when you need something, maybe to patent something. And there's SciFinder, which most of you know as being chemists here, is a flagship product of our company for research scientists, for researchers in chemistry and chemistry-related areas. So again, I said we have 1,300 people, 600 people are scientists. They speak, I mean, among us, there are about 50 languages spoken. So I have people from everywhere in the world. We cover about 10,000 journals. Out of those, 1,500 are core journals, and 61 patent authorities we're covering, out of which 9 are main patent authorities like JPO or USPTO, which is United States Patent Office, with Japan or a couple others, European Patent Office. Customers, I'm the Find the Product Manager for the academic and government market, and looking at academia, I'm managing about over 1,800 schools all over the world. We have all the top chemistry schools as well. 500 Fortune 500 corporations and government agencies as well. I'm going to talk a little bit. This is our team. You see, huge community there, about 1,300 people in our buildings. That's like a couple year old, I think, counting. I'm gonna change the slide quickly. maybe some people were missing. Maybe some people were missing from work. So, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about my career path. So I started University of Bucharest, and I graduated in 1993. But right before I graduated, last year, there was a great opportunity for me. They're just opening. In 1990, we had the communist regime went down, and we got all kind of scholarship from the Western countries coming into our universities. So in 1993, well, 1992 actually, 1 year before I graduated, they opened a thermodynamics, a mechanics laboratory. They wanted to be taught in French. This was a fun thing to do first, but most important was to open the students to the Western European scholarships, to be able to go somewhere else and study and improve their resumes and, you know, open their careers. So then I just jumped in, and my French was decent at that time, I would say, not anymore. And I decided to help the lab of thermodynamics and mechanics and just be a teaching assistant. I offer myself to be a teaching assistant in their department and help them with a laboratory manual. They needed someone to put together a laboratory manual, translate it from Romanian and French. So I just seized the opportunity. I thought, well, maybe it's going to help me someday. And that's how you guys we all should think, you know. Just seize the opportunity. See an opportunity. It might be hard. It might take some of your time, free time, but you never know when it's going to help. So that last year, I helped them about 6-7 months, and guess what? We get some Tempus scholarships coming in the Department of Biophysics, where I was studying. So I said, well, okay. And there were some very talented guys working with me in the group, and so there was an exam I had taken. I thought, why not? Let me try it. Maybe I'll get a scholarship. And I got a scholarship. And I was offered a scholarship at Paris 11 in France, in Paris. So that was for my 4 months to do my work of diploma there. It was a great experience. I was in the lab doing some nano laser technology. I worked with the computer for the first time in my life because we didn't have computer university at that time. This is back in '93. Go figure. So it was a fantastic experience. I wrote my diploma in French. I did some experiments in the lab. I got good feedback from the professors, and I got some connections there. The professor was an amazing guy. He was about 80 years old, I think, doing research. But he was fantastic. He was from Sweden originally. I still remember him, Dr. Larson. And fantastic guidance. And he said, well, you graduate, now what are you going to do? Well, I have no idea what I'm going to do. So he said, well, why don't we try to get a scholarship for you here to come for a master's? And I thought, well, that sounds amazing. I really like it. Because my best chance then was to graduate and just find a teaching position in high school somewhere, who knows, at the end of the country, somewhere. So he helped me. I went back, I graduated. I said, okay, we'll bring you a quarter here, a semester here in the Department of Physical Chemistry. And I did. The only problem was, school was very tough. I had lots of, I remember now, some theoretical chemistry courses. Those were killing me. But anyways, I thought it's worth it. I'll do it. So the end of a semester passed. I took all my exams and everything. But they realized they don't have a scholarship for me to go on. talked to a couple people with this professor that helped me. They said, well, we can help you with $500 a month. But living from $500 a month in Paris was a bit of a stretch. So I said, I think I'm sorry, I'm going to go home. So I went home. So I had to give it up. I felt sorry, but really there was no way for me to continue there. And I got a job. Let me see. Oh, yeah, that's next on the... Biotechnos was a Romanian Institute for Biophysics. And they were working then and now on bioactive natural products and wound healing. And guess what? My experience in the university where I was a teaching assistant, the fact that I was knowing French and that I had a scholarship in Paris, got me this job. So it all added up, you know. And I started working there, and I was happy. Well, I'm a biophysicist now. I live in the capital, far from parents. It's fantastic. So then 1 year passed, and I realized we don't have research money there. There are no research tools. You don't have things. I mean, the will was there to do lots of research, but the money was not there. And I kind of saw the salary was really low, and again was high standard of living in Bucharest, and which is the capital of Romania. My best friend, meanwhile, got a scholarship in the United States at the University of New Hampshire. And I thought, what should I do now? Should I continue? Should I lose this opportunity as a biophysicist? But I'm not going anywhere. So I thought, what if I go home with my parents, get a job there, stay with them, and then study to take my graduate record examination, improve my English, get my TOEFL exam, and maybe apply for scholarship. And that's what I did. I went home, I got a job in the Mining and Coal Institute as an interpreter. So again, a big jump from being a scientist to an interpreter. We'll have group of business people coming in and doing the business with my company, and I'll just translate from French and English. And that was pretty much my job. But that gave me, I followed what I wanted the most. I wanted to get back into school, into a PhD program. So I followed my heart. I said, okay, I leave this job back. I'm going to go study for 1 year, take my exams, get into a PhD program. Maybe I'm going to teach in university, because this was one thing I loved it when I was a TA there just for a short while, 6 months in university, in the University of Bucharest. So that's what I did. I studied hard. I had a little bit more time than I used to have when I was working for Biotechnos, the Romanian Biotechnology Institute. And I took my tests, I applied up university, and then I got offer. Let me see. Yeah, this were mixed up a little bit. I don't see my, I think one slide is missing, but I can talk about it. Yeah, the slide with me at Ohio State University is missing, I think. It's not here for some reason. Anyways, I got offered a scholarship in the Department of Biophysics. So I was doing biophysics again. The PhD program, I was extremely happy. I was supposed to be a TA, like you guys know, the TA or a GRA. And got here, got into cardiac electrophysiology, heart failure, ischemic perfusion injury, things. I loved it. 5 years. Graduated, got my PhD degree at the Ohio State University. I thought the world was mine. But then it happened at that time, exactly when I graduated, I got married as well. So I went to the honeymoon, or more like honey weekend, 3 days. And I got back and I realized, where am I gonna go now? You know? I talked to my advisor, and she's like, well, because I was thinking, well, maybe I'm gonna stay postdoc with her for 1-2 years. I'll find my way around. I'll find a job in industry or something, or maybe a 10-year track. I'll see how that goes. My advisor tells me, oh, Christian, I'm very sorry, but I'm gonna retire very soon. So I'm like, oh, this is not good news. So she said, okay, I can keep you maybe for 1 year, maybe 1.5 years. I'll see if I stay around. Because I'm sick with applying for grants. I did that for all my life. I want to retire now. Now it's your turn to do stuff. So it turned out I was lucky enough, and I stayed as a postdoc about 1 year, and then we got a new director of the institute and was doing exactly the things I was doing as a research, and he hired me as a postdoc there. And then I had 5 years of postdoctoral experience. And again, I was thinking, you know, 1 year passes, 2 years passes. I had a couple publications, which was fantastic. But the guy was big. He had a huge group. They had a group of 50 people. They're publishing tons of papers. He was really busy. He didn't have time for me. So I was thinking, well, I have to do something for myself. Where am I going to go from here? Right? Maybe I want a faculty position. So I applied for 2 grants, American Heart Association grants. Unfortunately, I didn't take the grants. I had very little guidance because the guy, again, was too busy to take care of me. And this might be in your case too, when you have an advisor that has a huge group. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to take care of you very well. So I thought, well, what should I do now? So my last 2 years as a postdoc, I started an MBA program at the Fisher College of Business right there on campus. I had my tuition paid, and I thought, well, I'm going to offer myself a chance to do something else in case this academic career doesn't work out. I thought, is it going to do something bad? Probably not. I'm going to learn about business. I didn't know anything about business. I'm going to learn something about business, the outside world of the academia. And I think all that stuff is maybe it's going to be useful for me, for something. And it was. Then in 2006, after I was trying with grants and I couldn't get any research funds for myself to build a tenure track career, it turned out that Chemical Abstract Service was right on campus of Ohio State University, needed someone with experience in biological field and the biosciences, and someone that knows a little bit about business, because that's a business, it's not research anymore. And here I was the person for them. It just happened, I got a job with them, and again, I'm just thinking, well, I had some opportunities. I could have said, it's too hard to go for an MBA program in the evening and do research and do evening classes, but I did it. It was a huge effort, and it paid off. That's what I can say. Just recently, I passed my project management certification, and I'm a happy camper now, I can say. So, how to, this I think is most important, besides what I said so far, I think this is the most important slide I have here. How to improve to obtain your chances to obtain a position in academia or industry. Communicate. Network with your peers, former graduates and faculty, and maybe this is the most important element as far as job search is concerned. Seize any opportunity, like I said. Whatever opportunity I had, I seized it. Seize any opportunity to attend scientific meetings and present our work. My first years, when I was presenting my work, my posters, I was hiding behind the poster. I was afraid to talk to people. They were looking my way, I was looking differently. And I realized, what am I doing? Am I going to ever get a job, you know? If you hide behind your poster, it's going to be hard to find a job or to meet people. Believe me, I did that for 2 years. I realized my third year, a little late, that I need to talk to people, network, present my work. You never know when you apply with your resume somewhere and there's a guy say, hey, I met you at ACS and you had a great talk. Your poster was fantastic. Those 3 words will get you the job. That's the way it is. Become a member of business-oriented social networking sites like LinkedIn. You'll find your colleagues there, lots of people, they leave recommendations for you, you leave for them, you build a little bit of your resume recommendation part. American Chemical Society, any other professional organization you can, especially if it's free. Why not? Go for it. Again, is that idea, seize any opportunity, talk to people, network to your peers. I think I had some, yeah. Another thing, be proactive. Apply for research grants or other funding opportunities. Don't get discouraged. I mean, I applied 2 times for American Heart Association grants. I didn't get it. I was not discouraged. I was ready to apply another 10 times. It's just the fact that the opportunity showed up and I got a job with Chemical Abstract Service. But otherwise, I would have been doing this over and over again until I've not gotten it. Use your advisor to get help with your work to be published. Otherwise, it's never going to see the light. I think I have 1 minute. You know, your advisors are busy, they have a million things on their head. They might have 30 people looking at 30 papers. Your work is not that many, maybe that important for him, but it's extremely important for you. So pressure your professor, before you graduate, have your work published somewhere. Attend job fairs, and maybe start an evening MBA if you plan a career in industry, or even if you don't. I just think that's gonna be useful. That's my advice to you. Thank you very much.
Well, I was just interested when I heard Christian speaking there, how similar his thought processes were to mine. Apart from doing the MBA, I did something a little different when I found myself doing that never-ending postdoc. At any rate, I'm a program manager now at the American Chemical Society in the Office of Graduate Education. And it's really nice to have a title slide. I didn't make that title slide. Somebody was very nice to Sarah. Thank you very much. That's a sign of a very good manager there. Because as a manager, you one of the things you do is you stop doing. You start delegating, or you start planning, you start doing these types of things. And when you stop doing, such as stopping to do presentations, you forget to do title slides. But the other important aspect of being a manager is to ensure that you have some oversight of what other people are doing. And so, again, Sarah, thank you. Good job. So, at any rate, I want to structure my talk a little differently and just show you right at the front a slide of my whole career, starting from undergraduate all the way to the current time. And if you take a moment to take a look at that, you'll see that I did my Bachelor of Science with honours, which means nothing to you guys here, because in Australia honours is a fourth year that you do after you do a 3-year degree. And as soon as I finished that, I went through this thought process of what's next, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. But I ended up doing a PhD in science at the same university. Again, something that's a little different in Australia compared to the US is that we don't move around much. We have several big universities in Australia, not like you guys here in the US. And so if you do your undergraduate studies at a particular university, you tend to stay there to do your PhD if you go ahead and do that. After that, I was visiting fellow, i.e. postdoc, at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. I'll explain to you why I did that. And after 5 years in that position, I took a research associate position at Ohio State University, where I met Christian. And it's not as if the two of us planned this, but we both ended up at the American Chemical Society after being at OSU. Don't draw any conclusions. So I don't know what you guys were thinking when you decided to do a PhD, but in my case, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't know if that's common or not, but that was my situation. I knew that I did like chemistry. And so, since I was doing very well in chemistry in my undergrad degree, I decided to do a PhD and do a more of the research-oriented type of chemistry work. And that's why I entered the PhD program at the University of Melbourne. So during my PhD, I was a physical chemist, a surface chemist to be precise, and I was studying the effects of surfactants on controlling how ultrasound could affect chemical reactions. It was a very interesting research project, and I loved what I was doing. And step back a few years from there, maybe more than a few, I remember when I was a kid, I had this dream. I was probably 5 or 6 years of age, and I had a dream of myself, in the future as an adult, sitting in this, behind the telescope and gazing at the stars and writing maps of the stars and doing research of, these outer space things. And I'm sure it had something to do with the space book that my parents bought for me at that time. And it was funny or sad, I don't know. As a PhD student, I found myself sitting in a lab at 2 o'clock in the morning, gazing at this beaker through which ultrasound was traveling and creating these little bubbles, which when they collapse, they produce these temperatures like the surface of the sun. And I was sitting there thinking, gee, I wish I had have wished that I was a banker or something like that, and not an astronomer. But at any rate, I loved what I was doing, as you can tell. And as a result, at the end of my PhD, I was in a similar situation. I took a look at all the opportunities outside of academia, and there really wasn't anything out there that I felt, I'd feel so passionate about, and that's doing research. And so my PhD advisor was clearly very impressed with my attitude towards work and my work ethic, that he suggested that I go to the National Institutes of Health and apply some of these things that we were learning in the biomedical arena. And I took a look at the position. I looked at the work of Peter Rees, who was my advisor there at NIH, and I felt, there's really quite an opportunity here to take some of that chemistry and use it in the medical field, something of more relevance than just doing basic research. And so I decided to go to the US and do that. And so, again at NIH, I started off really well, got some really good publications in the research that I was doing, ended up getting a patent for some of the work that I was doing. So from the research end of things were going great. But probably 2 or 3 years into being a postdoc at NIH, I started applying for those academic positions, and I was getting lots of interest. Well, I thought I was getting letters saying, "Thank you for your great application. Unfortunately, so it wasn't working out the way I had planned." Luckily, or I thought I was lucky, somewhere around between the 3rd and 4th year that I was there, my advisor actually approached me and said, "Joe, I think I can get you a senior scientist position at NIH." And I heard that, and I jumped. I thought, this is fantastic. I get to do something that I'm really passionate about. Obviously I love doing that research that I was doing, and I thought, well, there's, no need for me to even diversify much further here, and I'll end up taking a career path that I felt I was really going to love. Enter the US government. When the US government says, we're cutting back, that means somebody who's working in the US government might get affected. And so during that time, or somewhere around that time, the relatively new scientific director of the National Cancer Institute was hiring like crazy just before the government suggested that we need to cut back. And he hired probably 10 to 15% more workforce at the National Cancer Institute than what he was allowed to hire. And at any rate, it turned out that he overhired, and so the government stepped in and said, we're going to have to cut back. And they did. And because of that cutback, I couldn't get that position that was sort of promised to me. So at any rate, anything can happen in your career, and so you need to be prepared. If you're not prepared, and this is where the advice comes in, you could end up in a situation like that. So, now as a grad student and also for the postdocs in here, you're probably very focused on your research. I'm sure some of you are thinking outside of the box already. For those of you who aren't, you probably might want to start thinking outside of the box, because you need to have a backup plan. Anything can, and in some cases does happen. This is probably the most important part of my career path that I wanted to share today. And I'm going to have to wrap it up because Sarah's telling me to wrap it up. But I do have to tell you this. As a research associate at OSU, which was the position I managed to find after the thing at NIH happened, the most important step I took was to go to OSU Careers and see what try and learn what else was out there, because by this stage, I was very narrow-minded, very focused on research and nothing else. That trip to OSU Careers was one of the most important things I did in my life. I think I learned so much from people there, from different backgrounds, that really helped me understand how to go about, not just what's out there, but how to go about getting what's out there, okay, as a chemist. The third most important thing after taking that initial step to OSU was doing an analysis of myself. That's extremely important because, you know, myself and the other speakers here spend a bit of time telling you about what it is that we do in our positions. I didn't get to tell you much about what I do, but it's probably more important that I tell you that you do an analysis of yourself to find out what it is you love to do. Yes, that's very important, but you also might want to take out a piece of paper and write it down. When I say what you love to do, I'm not just talking about the type of research or chemistry or whatever it is that you're doing now that, you know, related to that you love to do or related to a job, but what is it that you love to do in life? Or, you know, that's a very important step, and you need to write it down. Then you need to write down all the skills that you have. You need to take a look at your skills on an individual basis, figure out the ones that you're really good at. You got to go through this process, because if you can draw lines between what it is that you love to do and the skills that you're really good at, you're not going to get a 100% match. But do your best, and then try to look for jobs where you can combine those two aspects. Now, you're not always going to be able to do it, especially when you finish grad school. You need to get on with your career, but it's an important step that you need to consider. You might want to, after grad school, immediately just take a job that you're going to be good at. That's important. And then think about these things a little later. But you need to go through this process, okay? Because that's going to help you with your backup plan. The next most important thing I did was to go to ACS Careers. You're going to get a lot out of that. And that's how I ended up with my current job. I also would suggest that you go to this website. That's why I put it there in that type of writing. I don't want to force you to go. Just go if you want to go. But I tell you, there's a lot of nice opportunities on there. You'll find a lot of interesting things. You'll find our email address. Feel free to contact us. If you ever need anything from us, we'll be happy to help. Thank you very much.